Police believe 4 men in total are responsible for ambushing and stabbing Levi Johnson outside a gym in Mansfield. He died at the scene.
Levi Johnson didn't see it coming. The 23-year-old was driving a black Mercedes SUV when a stolen silver Ford Falcon swerved into his path and forced him off the road. Within seconds, 4 men jumped out, armed with knives. It was broad daylight, just outside the bustling Good Life Health Club in Mansfield, Brisbane. Levi tried to escape. He reversed his car. He ran, but there was no way out. CCTV would later show him being chased and stabbed in the middle of the parking lot. Witnesses watched in horror. Some froze, others screamed. By the time emergency services arrived, Levi Johnson was already gone. The ambush was swift, brutal, and deliberate. What followed was a manhunt that exposed a tangled web of Bikie affiliations, family feuds, and underworld payback. Levi wasn't just any young man. He was the son of a well-known former Bikie boss, and his murder was far from random. This is the story of how a public assassination sparked a chain of events that would see rival gangs, family honor, and Queensland's organized crime units collide in a bloody battle for power. The ambush happened in broad daylight. It was just after 1 p.m. on Monday, September 26, 2022. Levi Johnson was behind the wheel of a black Mercedes SUV, turning into the Good Life Health Club car park on Pine Mountain Road in Mansfield, Brisbane. He'd been there before. It was routine, familiar, but this time, someone else was waiting. As he approached the gym, a silver Ford Falcon appeared from nowhere. It wasn't a near miss. It was deliberate. The Falcon swerved directly into Levi's path, forcing his SUV off the road and into the curb. Before the Mercedes could reverse, 4 masked men jumped out. Fast, coordinated, armed. Levi hit reverse, tried to escape, but the Mercedes clipped a garden bed and came to a stop. Levi bolted from the car. Witnesses later recalled seeing him run in a panic toward the gym doors, looking for safety. He didn't get far. One attacker caught him. The others followed. The stabbing was quick and frenzied. CCTV captured it all. Levi collapsed near the gym entrance as staff and members inside looked on in horror. He bled out before help could arrive. The 4 men sprinted back to the Ford Falcon and fled the scene. The car was later found torched on a nearby street, a classic underworld tactic to destroy evidence. By the time emergency crews arrived, it was too late. Levi Johnson, just 23 years old, was dead. News of the killing spread quickly. It wasn't just the brutality, it was the confidence. Midday, public place, CCTV, witnesses. Nothing had deterred the attackers. Queensland police immediately launched a full-scale homicide investigation, but they already knew this wasn't random. Levi Johnson wasn't an average 23-year-old. He was the son of Shane Bowden, once one of the most feared bikies in the country, a man who'd been executed in his own driveway just 2 years earlier in a Gangland hit that remains unsolved. Shane had switched allegiances between rival clubs, fallen out with powerful figures, and built a reputation as a wild card. That history didn't die with him. It followed Levi, and investigators were convinced this was payback. Police confirmed that Levi had no known club affiliations, no serious criminal record, no charges. But being Bowden's son put a target on his back, especially in Brisbane's fragile underworld, where old grudges are inherited and reputations must be defended. As detectives pieced together the final moments of Levi's life, a picture began to emerge. His murder wasn't a one-off act of revenge. It was the next move in a long, simmering gang feud. And behind the masks, authorities believed, were men tied to a rival network with old scores to settle. The Good Life Health Club stabbing was just the beginning. Within hours of the stabbing, Queensland police had sealed off the gym's car park and begun collecting evidence. Forensic officers scanned the scene, retrieved CCTV footage from surrounding businesses, and began taking witness statements. The footage was clear. The attack was fast, coordinated, and unmistakably targeted. The car used by the offenders, a silver Ford Falcon, had been stolen in the days prior. It was found later that evening, burnt out in the Brisbane suburb of Tarragindi. The torching was a dead giveaway. Whoever had done this knew exactly how to cover their tracks. But they made mistakes. Detectives from the homicide and organized crime units began tracing every lead: mobile phone data, known associates, ANPR camera hits. The case was treated as a gangland assassination from the start, one that required the expertise of Task Force Maxima, Queensland's specialist unit for outlaw motorcycle gangs and organized crime. Just 2 days after the murder, police made their first breakthrough. A 34-year-old man named Kyle Martin was arrested in Ipswich. He was one of the 4 men alleged to have taken part in the attack. Martin wasn't a high-level player, but police believed he was part of the crew hired or ordered to carry out the job. He was charged with murder. Next came a second man, a 35-year-old named Jordan Tilley, arrested on Brisbane's south side. Tilley had previously been linked to bikie groups, but had kept a low profile in recent years. Police alleged that he too was directly involved in the fatal ambush. As news of the arrests broke, the theory that Levi's murder was tied to his father gained more traction. Shane Bowden had burned many bridges in the bikie world. He'd once been a feared member of the Finks, then defected to the Mongols, then returned to the Finks again. That kind of switching isn't just frowned upon, it's punishable. In 2020, Shane was gunned down in his Gold Coast driveway, shot more than 20 times in what police called a professional hit. The killers were never caught. Now, just 2 years later, his son had been stabbed to death by a group of masked men outside a Brisbane gym. It didn't take long for detectives to start connecting dots. There were whispers that the men behind Levi's murder were affiliated with a breakaway group from the Mongols, the same club Bowden had once double-crossed. Others suggested the hit was payback for a separate feud Levi may have unintentionally stepped into. But one thing was clear: this wasn't just a stabbing. This was a message. In the weeks following the murder, police made a third arrest, a man named Trevor French, 36, also from Brisbane. He was found hiding in a caravan park and taken into custody without incident. French was also charged with murder. At this point, 3 of the 4 suspected attackers were in custody, but one man remained on the run, and he would prove to be the most elusive of them all. The 4th suspect's name was already known to police. 26-year-old Slade Murdoch was no stranger to Queensland law enforcement. He had a long rap sheet, charges ranging from drug offenses to assaults and armed robberies. But this time, he wasn't just wanted for a fight. He was now one of the most wanted men in the state, suspected of taking part in a brutal gang murder in broad daylight. A warrant was issued for his arrest. Task Force Maxima and the Homicide Squad launched a coordinated search across southeast Queensland. Police publicly warned that Murdoch was dangerous and likely armed. He had ties to multiple bikie networks, and detectives feared he could flee the state, or worse, go to ground with the help of organized crime contacts. The public manhunt dragged on for weeks. Police raided homes, searched bushland, and monitored known associates. They called on the public for help, releasing Murdoch's face to the media. But the longer he remained on the run, the more questions began to surface. Why hadn't he fled the country? Was he being protected? And who had actually ordered the hit? Meanwhile, Levi Johnson's family broke their silence. His mother, devastated and still grieving the loss of her former partner Shane Bowden, made a public plea for justice. She described Levi as a gentle soul who had nothing to do with the club world. He was trying to break free from that life, she said. He didn't deserve this. None of us do. But even that wasn't enough to slow the violence. In early October 2022, barely 2 weeks after Levi's murder, police responded to a suspected arson attack on a home connected to one of the arrested men. No injuries were reported, but the message was clear. Retaliation was on the table. As detectives dug deeper, they began to suspect the motive behind Levi's murder went beyond just family ties. One theory was that Levi had been mistaken for someone else, or that he had been unknowingly involved in a separate feud tied to the drug trade. Another was that the attack had been ordered as part of a larger internal power struggle involving a Brisbane-based outlaw motorcycle club with splintered allegiances. Still, the core belief remained. The stabbing was deliberate, personal, and symbolic. In late October, nearly a month after the murder, police finally tracked down the fourth man. Slade Murdoch was arrested without incident at a home in Upper Mount Gravett. He was charged with murder and remanded in custody. With all four suspects now behind bars, police declared the case largely solved. But the motive, they admitted, was still murky. Queensland Police Commissioner Katarina Carroll publicly praised the fast work of the investigators, saying, "This was a coordinated, targeted, and horrific attack. The arrests show we will not stop until everyone responsible is held to account." But inside the prison system, tension was building. 3 of the accused were placed in isolation units. Word spread fast inside correctional circles. And in Australia's overcrowded jails, gang allegiances don't stop at the gate. And on the streets of Brisbane, retaliation still loomed. To understand why Levi Johnson was killed, you have to understand the man who raised him. Shane Bowden wasn't just another bikie. He was one of the most notorious enforcers in Australia's outlaw motorcycle club scene. Born and raised on the Gold Coast, Bowden rose through the ranks of the Finks, becoming known for his size, aggression, and complete disregard for consequences. He wasn't just feared, he was volatile. In 2006, Bowden made national headlines after taking part in the infamous Ballroom Blitz, a vicious bikie brawl between the Finks and Hells Angels at the Royal Pines Resort on the Gold Coast. Armed with knuckle dusters, Bowden and others stormed the ballroom, leaving several men bloodied. He was eventually jailed for his role in the attack. After his release, Bowden shocked the Gangland world by defecting to the Mongols, the Finks' bitter rivals. For an outlaw, this kind of switch was dangerous. It violated the code, and Shane paid for it. He was later booted from the Mongols, labeled a liability. In 2020, after a brief stint in Victoria, he returned to the Gold Coast and was murdered in a professional-style hit in his driveway. The killers fired more than 20 rounds. None were ever caught. At the time of his death, Shane Bowden was trying to restart his own chapter of the Mongols, but word on the street was that no one wanted to align with him. He had made too many enemies, burned too many bridges. Some believed he was setting himself up to be a rival power, and in the bikie world, that's a death sentence. Levi Johnson grew up in the shadow of all that chaos. While he wasn't officially linked to any club, police believed that old grudges didn't die with Shane. In the underworld, a blood debt can pass from father to son. Levi had his father's last name. He drove a blacked-out Mercedes. He moved in similar circles. And most importantly, he was visible. Levi's murder didn't just feel personal, it felt ritualistic. Police sources speculated that the hit may have been ordered not just to even the score, but to serve as a public reminder. No one is untouchable, not even the sons of former kings. In prison, that kind of reputation followed all 4 accused. Each man was linked, either directly or by association, to outlaw motorcycle clubs operating in southeast Queensland. Task Force Maxima believed that the attack on Levi Johnson had the hallmarks of a gang directive, not a rogue act of street violence. What made the case more complicated was the silence. No one was talking. Not the accused, not the gangs, not the families. Everyone involved knew that the stakes had just risen, and that retaliation could still be coming. For Queensland police, the job wasn't just to prosecute the killers. It was to stop the bleeding before it spread. That meant surveillance, raids, prison separation orders, and a renewed crackdown on club chapters in the Logan and Gold Coast areas. Even as charges were filed, the broader war was still very much alive. With all 4 suspects behind bars, the official line from Queensland police was clear. Justice was underway. But for Levi Johnson's family, closure was nowhere in sight. The legal process moved slowly. Each of the 4 accused, Kyle Martin, Jordan Tilley, Trevor French, and Slade Murdoch, was charged with murder. Bail was denied. All were remanded in custody to await trial, but their cases quickly became entangled in legal delays, procedural motions, and security concerns inside prison. Behind the scenes, correctional officers flagged rising tensions between inmates tied to different bikie groups. The accused were housed in protective custody. According to sources, threats had been made against them by rival inmates, and not just from the victim's side. Some believed the murder had been a step too far, even by Gangland standards. Killing the son of a murdered ex-bikie in public, in broad daylight, had brought police heat down on everyone. On the outside, Task Force Maxima ramped up pressure on bikie chapters in Logan, Ipswich, and the northern suburbs of Brisbane. More than a dozen raids were carried out in the weeks after the arrests, resulting in multiple seizures, firearms, drugs, burner phones, encrypted devices. But no one talked. Not about Levi's case, not about who gave the order, and not about whether another retaliation was coming. In the media, Levi's name became a shorthand for everything wrong with Queensland's spiraling gang violence. He wasn't a member of any club. He wasn't under investigation. He didn't have a lengthy criminal history, but he still ended up dead, brutally, publicly, and strategically. And that made people nervous. Because if someone like Levi Johnson could be targeted, who else might be next? Queensland police began working closely with intelligence units across New South Wales and Victoria, monitoring cross-border movements of known bikies. They weren't just looking for people on the run. They were trying to prevent an escalation. Authorities were aware that other young men, family members, friends, associates of Levi, could become the next victims or perpetrators. They issued quiet warnings. They increased patrols in known hotspots, and they kept surveillance pressure high on anyone linked to either the victim or the 4 accused. Still, beneath the surface, tensions simmered. In Mansfield, where the stabbing took place, the gym eventually reopened, but the trauma lingered. Staff and patrons were offered counseling. Some witnesses later said they couldn't erase the image of Levi running for his life, or the cold precision of the attack. For Levi's mother, it was a second heartbreak in just 2 years. She'd lost Shane in 2020, gunned down in his own driveway. Now she'd lost Levi, stabbed to death in a car park. Both deaths still unresolved, both tied to a life she had long tried to escape. And for Queensland's Organised Crime Task Force, Levi Johnson's murder was more than just a case file. It was a warning that the gang wars were evolving, that grudges didn't die with the men who made them, and that the cost of vengeance in Australia's criminal underworld wasn't going down, it was going up. In the months since Levi Johnson was ambushed and killed outside that gym in Mansfield, many questions have been answered, but just as many remain. Police arrested 4 men. They were charged. The footage was clear. The timeline was precise. But the motive, the real reason behind the daylight execution of a 23-year-old with no confirmed club links, has never been officially confirmed. The theory that Levi was targeted because of his father, Shane Bowden, is the one that makes the most sense to those watching the streets. But no charges have ever connected the murder to any higher-level bikie leadership. No orders traced. No club named. If someone greenlit the hit, they're still out there. And that's the part that worries detectives the most. Because Levi's killing didn't just affect one family. It shifted the entire temperature of Queensland's underworld. Clubs tightened ranks, Police expanded surveillance. Retaliations were threatened. And behind closed doors, the fear returned that another public execution could happen again, anywhere, to anyone caught in the wrong crossfire. In many ways, Levi Johnson became a symbol of a new generation of gangland victims, the ones who might not have signed up for the life, but are still bound to it by blood, by name, by legacy. And in the world of outlaw clubs, legacy can kill you. His death exposed how organized violence has evolved. It's no longer limited to late-night brawls in industrial estates or drug deals gone wrong in alleyways. Now, it's showing up in shopping center car parks, outside gyms, at red lights. It's calculated, precise, and public. What used to be personal beefs are now tactical moves, executions meant to send messages. And in Queensland, a state already strained by years of bikie warfare, patched over clubs and criminal splinters, the message from Levi's murder was chillingly clear. You're never safe, not even in daylight, not even if you're not patched. Levi Johnson should have had a future. Instead, he was chased, cornered, and stabbed to death while people stood and watched, caught between fear and disbelief. And the men who did it? They didn't just run. They erased themselves, burnt the car, wore masks, hid in silence for weeks. But justice caught up with them. Or at least, the system did. Whether they were the real orchestrators or just the messengers remains the biggest mystery of all. And for the families caught on either side, there's no peace, just court dates, rumors, and the slow, grinding weight of a cycle that doesn't seem to stop. Levi Johnson's death wasn't random. It was deliberate. But the fallout from it? That's still being written.